everyone. Welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'm going to be covering the weather for April 26th of 2023. Today there's two enhanced risks. One for the eastern coast of Florida, the slight risk going down all the way, extending from Miami to parts of southern Georgia, and where I'm going to be focusing on in today's live stream for the severe weather coverage is in central Texas. It was earlier today. It was further up north. It was somewhere around here, and it was moved south. But there's also a slight risk it's extending into Louisiana. Where we're going to see the possibility for embedded tornadoes with an embedded system along here, along that front. At least that's what I've seen. It could be even down here. You'll see it in today's live stream or on the pivotal weather models. But where I'm expecting a lot of the tornado threat to be is in the slight risk area throughout there, and then same in that area, probably even a bigger threat in this, possibly the entire area here, and including this area, is very large hail and damaging wind gusts, especially with the organized system that is along here. I'm expecting large hail with that front and a very strong gusts of wind and the possibility for embedded tornadoes with that front, and then also for Florida, the slight risk going all the way down here, with the marginal risk extending to the western coast of Florida. I'm especially in the enhanced risk area. There's the potential for isolated tornadoes, but everywhere else in the slight risk and the rest of the marginal risk, probably not so much up here, but there could still be the possibility is probably going to be more isolated to Florida in the slight risk. Is the potential for very large isolated hail, the potential for an isolated tornado or two, and isolated damaging winds with the isolated supercells that could develop on the Florida peninsula and off coast, that it could be blown inward by sea breezes, and potentially any waterspouts that are developed with those isolated supercells off the coast could be blown by sea breezes inland to potentially do a little bit of damage to the coastline. Um, so that's our main threats: a tornado threat, tornado, large hail, and damaging winds, and a smaller tornado threat, but very large hail and damaging winds in both of these areas. If we look at the pivotal weather models, we can see that there is a slightly more there's a more organized system around here. I can actually get a better view of this if I go into regional. Let me do that here. Let me do that really quickly. If pivotal weather will just stop being crazy on me. I really hate how it moves the line whenever you just hover your mouse over it, but you can see how it's a lot more organized throughout here, and then you can see how later a large area, especially in the Dallas area. Dallas is somewhere in there. Very large hail. The potential for isolated, or not isolated, but embedded tornadoes with this system. I think it's going to be more than a front, more of a front than a big blob. But this, it could potentially be a large blob, but I think it's going to be more of a front. But Dallas, if we switch back to the SPS forecast with the enhanced risk, you can see that if we turn on cities, the city overlay, Dallas is right outside that enhanced risk area. So earlier today, it was probably moved down as everything started to blow to the southeast, but Dallas was in immediate effect for the enhanced risk and the tornado threat and the threat for very large hail. So earlier today, Dallas was in a pretty bad situation, but then you can see how it continues. it develops more into a front, like I was saying, as it moves further into Texas, and Dallas again is somewhere in there. Dallas has the threat for very large hail and damaging straight line winds with the system as it moves eastward. But then as that all moves eastward, it's going to potentially bring the potential for embedded tornadoes, not isolated, but embedded very, very large hail, especially through northern Louisiana and southern Arkansas, as we're seeing mostly here. And that's all expected to move eastward, and potentially some isolated isolated supercell threats down through the back end of this system, possibly. Maybe not likely because of the threat, because of the fact it's all one big line, but there could be the possibility for that. But overall, if it doesn't become isolated, then there could still be the threat for embedded tornadoes as this moves eastward. But it's expected to move eastward into the Arkansas area, Arkansas, Louisiana, and the Mississippi Valley, and maybe even potentially bring the threat for very large hail to northern Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and maybe even Memphis. As you can see these blotches, see the blotches there. You can see the blotches of what could potentially be very, very large hail going into Thursday by tomorrow, and then isolated, probably, possibly an isolated hail threat back out the end. But this is probably all one big line, so there's probably not going to be much of an isolated threat. It's probably all going to be embedded. At least that's my thought. That all moves eastward, continuing to the rest of the United States, rest of the eastern United States. If we go back out of regional to the entire continent, or not continent, but country, you can see as that system moves eastward, you can still see the potential for large large hail, especially down through the deep south and through the Dixie Valley. Um, and that's all expected to have the possibility for damaging winds along this front, and then along with it, the potential for, again, very, very large hail and maybe a tornado threat. But you can see how as it continues east, it seems to become a little bit more developed, especially throughout Georgia, and you saw through Alabama right here earlier. Um, and that continues eastward and develops into it becomes it looks like it merges with the front, but could also still just be part of the front. But then you can also see another possible hail threat with the back end of this storm. There's going to be, it looks like there's going to be a front in front of it, and then the possibility for a back end of storms out through the back, carrying along the potential for a hail threat into Thursday and Friday, and that will all move east. But then you can also see development in the Gulf of Mexico here. You can really see a lot of development start in the Gulf of Mexico down there, and that's expected to move eastward and bring another potential for very large hail through Florida, and maybe the possibility for a tornado threat too, and that moves eastward. Um, but I'll cover. You saw that line there. You saw that line down through Texas, most likely. I'm probably gonna cover that in our when it gets to the time for that. But just keep that in mind that there could what it looks like the possibility for very large hail and damaging winds along that front. But because it's later into the week, it could be subject to change. But I'm probably gonna cover this in the next week's live stream, or not next week's live stream, but to when it gets to that time on Saturday's forecast. But you can see how. Okay, let me show you how what is causing the tornado threat for this area down through Texas. Actually, I'll show you a little bit of Florida first. You can see a large area for upper level winds. That is not a good color. Give me a minute. You can see lots of upper level winds blowing this direction across the Florida coast, or not Florida coast, but across the Florida peninsula, and then also strong upper level winds along what looks like a boundary through a boundary here that is potentially going to bring, not going to bring, but push the severe weather threat in Texas off into Arkansas, and then potentially bring a tornado threat, potentially tornado threat, embedded tornado threat, definitely a threat for large hail and damaging straight line winds along the front of that boundary. Um, but if we look at the humidity in the atmosphere, if we look at the dew point, we can see that there is the. Let me go into more of a regional view to get a better view of it in south central US. You can see that there is that intense dry line that developed, pushing on everything over here, concentrating it to potentially, which is probably going to fuel all this moisture from the Gulf of Mexico going up north, and then the dry line along here, especially right here, pushing on it and condensing everything into this one area, and especially along the dry line as that moves east, potentially going to bring, not potentially, it's most likely going to bring the potential for embedded tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds for today along that dry line. And you can see that dry line kind of persists as the system moves eastward. You can see deep moisture along the frontal boundary as that moves east. Um, but so that is, you can also see large amounts of moisture in Louisiana, and large amounts of moisture here too, down through southern Arkansas and northern Louisiana, which was showing a lot more of the hail threat down through there as the frontal boundary. You could see the frontal boundary earlier along this. This moisture is what's giving it that potential, that deep moisture there. If we look at the instability in the atmosphere, the Cape, we can see that there is still a large amount of instability in that area, and also down here too. But yeah, so Eastern Texas is really at risk here for strong severe weather. But then you see the instability along the line here, along the frontal boundary, as that moves eastward, bringing large amounts of instability in the atmosphere to southern Arkansas, Louisiana, and that is expected to continue into the deep southern United States and continue eastward along that frontal boundary. Um, if we look at wind shear, if we look at the wind shear, the horizontally rotating wind, um, we can see that there is large amounts of wind shear across eastern Texas, and then that boundary that was here too. There's not really much past it, but there is a lot past it, or but in front of it. That's going to, plus the instability plus the strong wind shear is what's giving the potential for rotating supercells down through this area and giving it the strong tornado potential. And that continues eastward. Again, it continues eastward with just like everything else has. It's going to continue eastward with everything else along the frontal boundary, and potentially bring a tornado threat, as embedded tornado threat, as well as a large hail damaging wind threat along Arkansas and Louisiana, and potentially western Mississippi too. Not western, yeah, western. I'm not. I'm just trying to speak quick because this is an urgent matter and I gotta get live. So, I mean, we pretty much checked off every single box here. I mean, we could look at lower level winds, but I think I looked at them earlier and there wasn't really that much that like really intense lower level winds. Okay, never mind. I actually stand corrected here. There are strong lower level winds in this area, uh, which is it's going to fuel a lot of the severe weather along that boundary. And then you can see, just like everything else, it continues eastward with a front. Again, bringing the potential for a embedded tornado threat, very large hail, and damaging straight line winds. So I'm going to be live probably right after I post this video. So by the time you're seeing this, I am probably live and covering the severe weather. Um, and make sure to check the socials for Project Gladiator. And what if you live in this area? Make sure you watch for any notifications about tornado warnings or anything, any hazards such as damaging winds, damaging wind gusts, large hail, or tornadoes. Um, they are all likely to happen with this system as it moves eastward. So make sure you're paying attention to the National Weather Service, and I'll hopefully see you with another forecast tomorrow.